Hey everyone, it's Natalie here, and welcome to the No-Till Market Garden podcast. I am super excited today about my guests, Nico Angelbert and Julie Dawson, who are leaders in participatory plant breeding. They are helping develop varieties that are regionally adapted to the traits that matter for direct market growers like most of you. They've developed a platform to make it easier to include farmers in variety trials to select for things like taste. I know everyone listening is involved in farming or gardening largely because you know that not all tomatoes are created equal and not all carrots are created equal. Variety matters, production practices matter, and how long it takes to get the product into the hands of the consumer matters. Truth be told, I do not have the personality to be a direct market farmer, so props to all of you out there. But when I was farming and someone would tell me they never liked Brussels sprouts until they ate my Brussels sprouts, it was one of the most rewarding feelings. It's so awesome. So what Nico and Julie are doing in their participatory breeding work is trying to spread that feeling by increasing our collective capacity for developing new and amazing varieties. The website for their project is seedlinked.com, and I'll share a little more about navigating it at the end of the episode. Their work is truly inspiring to me, and I hope some of you out there can get involved.
Today's episode of the No-Till Market Garden podcast is brought to you by Farmer's Friend. In a world where the threat of food insecurity is quickly becoming the new norm, Farmer's Friend exists to equip, educate, and inspire growers to change the world through regenerative agriculture. Small farms are the future, and the future is now. If you need quality tools and supplies for your vegetable or flower operation, check out their growing selection of innovative and affordable tunnels, tools, tarps, and much more. Here at my home farm, we rely heavily on Farmer's Friend for our production. We have 3 of their Caterpillar tunnels. We use the silage tarps for occultation. Their row covers have gotten us through hard winters. And of course, the Quick Cut Greens Harvester has sped up our baby greens harvest tremendously. Visit farmersfriend.com/no-till today. That's farmersfriend.com/no-till. Or visit the link in the show notes and get free shipping on your entire order. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rimmel Greenhouses.
Whether it's tomatoes to market, flowers in the spring, or your family's harvest, growing in a greenhouse protected from the weather provides the right environment that you need for a harvest that you can count on. Rimmel Greenhouses are designed for durability and offer the quality that you need to grow productively year-round. Visit rimmelgreenhouses.com to get a quote today.
If I may editorialize for a second, I own a Rimmel tunnel. I love it. We built it ourselves, and I really appreciated the quality of the tunnel as well as the customer service we received in the process. So make sure to check them out. All right, back to the show.
If you all could just start right in with, introducing yourselves, your current position, what you do, how you became interested in seeds and organic and small scale agriculture. Why don't we start with Julie?
Sure. So I'm Julie Dawson. I'm an associate professor at University of Wisconsin-Madison and the state extension specialist for urban and regional food systems. And I first got involved in seeds or interested in seeds in high school with a biology class where we planted the progeny of an F1 hybrid and saw all the different types of seed that grew, and learned about Mendel and basic genetics. I was already interested in agriculture and the environment, and so that really got me interested in genetics and plant breeding. And I kind of saw that as a way to help farmers and to help the environment, particularly with organic systems. And so I really got started in high school and haven't stopped. And I don't regret it at all.
That's great. How about you, Nico?
Yeah, it really came in college, but I grew up, in farm, central France, small farming, really exposed indirectly to seed and gardening and producing vegetable. We have an organization called Cocopelli in France. It's similar and a little bit of Seed Saver Exchange. Has been like one of the most engaged organizations in the alternative seed movement, and I grew up kind of this space in their farm and so forth. But it kind of working be more fully engaged when I started in college, and I was fascinated by on-farm biofuel production, and ended up doing my PhD in brassica breeding in Colorado to try to improve local adapted crop like Camelina and different brassica for oil production in semi-arid environments, and start at this point to be really fascinated by more on-farm decentralized system, and then ultimately face the struggle to find breeding position in this kind of emerging seed movement to economy, and ended up working for a large seed company, but in parallel still being really engaged and fascinated by so many movements in Europe and in the US, and it's pretty much kind of how I ended up meeting Julie at one point.
Oh yeah, that was going to be my next question, was how did you two meet? And I know you've been, and how did you come upon your collaborations?
I think Julie, I was in France, and I ended up meeting Isabelle Goldranger, who is at INRA, who was your postdoc.
Right.
Advisor, that's right.
Yeah, and then I think we connected at the Organic Seed Growers Conference after that. I did a postdoc in France for 3 years with Isabelle Goldranger, who's working on participatory wheat breeding, and then came back to the States and continued on participatory wheat breeding. And then when I got to UW, I switched into doing more in vegetables and met Nico at the Organic Seed Growers Conference out in Oregon. And we had a lot of shared interests about how to improve participatory research, and it kind of grew from there.
So I want, there's some terms that we're throwing around, like participatory breeding and participatory research. And before we get into that, I want to get a little bit back to the basics of plant breeding. Like if you could start us at sort of plant breeding 101, like when I look through my Johnny's catalog, where did these varieties come from?
Julie, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a really interesting question, because a lot of the varieties in seed catalogs come from other breeding companies. And so there are many different people contributing to breeding. And breeding at its most basic is selecting plants that meet our needs and finding good combinations of traits that then are, made into a new variety. And so people will start out with a goal. I want a better tasting tomato. They might start with different existing varieties and cross them together and then plant them all out and select the ones that have good taste, but also have the other traits that they want: productivity, disease resistance, earliness, resistance to cracking. There are many, many things that people want in a tomato. And so all different breeders want to develop varieties that are adapted to their particular environment. So where you do this selection matters, because varieties may be more or less adapted to a particular set of environmental conditions or management systems like organic agriculture. And then which traits you want matters. So in certain regions, certain traits may be more important than others. Maybe you have different diseases. So many people can participate in breeding. When you open a catalog, those varieties might come from a number of different sources. So if you look at a catalog, some of those varieties might be actually developed by that company. Some varieties might be developed by another company that specializes in breeding. And then once they have a variety, they sell seed wholesale to these retail seed companies. Some of the varieties might come from independent breeders that primarily focus on one crop or even one, particular set of traits or region. And then they might release a variety, and a seed company will say, hey, that works really well for us. Can we carry it? And then they'll pay the breeder to be able to, carry that variety. Some of them might come from public universities. And so in your catalog, sometimes it says where those varieties come from, sometimes it doesn't. but they come from a wide range of different sources usually.
Yeah, and to go back into the breeding, it's a long process, right? There's like characterization of parents, there's crossing, early generation and nursery, and so on, all the way to pre-commercialization to commercialization can be, 8 to 12 years, right, Julie? So the costs, there's a huge cost associated to develop this variety, which part of it is what drove also the seed industry to be the way it is currently. And so it's many, especially in like probably most people who are listening are a small grower who plant many different species, many different varieties, so specialized, very highly diverse farm system, but also in management system. But because of this cost and also in search of profit and margin, we've seen a lot of R&D or breeding done in large crop like corn and bean, and much less into pretty much all the other crop, right? I think I had the opportunity to work for the large seed company, but we can see more than 70% sometimes of their R&D is strictly on corn and bean. And so the consequence is that all those minor crops that with Julie, specialty crop, we try to work and push the needle on, have lower budget, meaning they have a lower set of location or environment, as Julie mentioned. You have to test in kind of the environment that is going to be grown. But if you have limited of budget and capacity, you end up breeding in a very limited amount of place and management, and then it becomes very hard to develop, a high-performing variety for a given space.
And it goes beyond just the set of crops, but also certain regions are not well served, and certain management systems like organic may not be well served by the existing larger scale breeding programs, because of market demands on those companies to really be global. And so what you see is smaller scale breeding companies and public institutions can serve those smaller markets as well as independent breeders and farmers. And one of the goals of participatory breeding is to leverage farmers' expertise and the expertise and effort of many smaller scale breeding programs to fill the needs of regional adaptation and crops that might not otherwise have significant breeding efforts. I think one of the reasons that Nico and I have really worked together on this is because we're both really excited about the possibility of having many, many people involved in breeding as a way of delivering varieties that work well for farmers. And technology now is allowing us to do that in a much more efficient way than we might have been able to in previous decades, where there wasn't as much available for managing trials and also coordinating with large groups of farmers.
Yeah, so to be really explicit, what are some of the issues that might arise if a seed company is doing most of its trials in California and then you're trying to grow those seeds in the upper Midwest, or they're doing their trials in a conventional system and organic farmers are trying to grow those varieties? What are some of the issues?
Yeah, like management, for example, would be highly different than like in Salinas Valley, 1,000-acre farm versus in the upper Middle West frontal where Julie and I are, with a much smaller farm, but also the earliness and climate and disease. Here we have much more humidity and much more disease prone that probably in Salinas on the south they will not have. Julie, maybe.
Yeah, we definitely see a difference in the disease pressure here because we have very warm, humid summers. We also have warm nights during the summer. And so We just don't see varieties that were selected only in drier climates doing well because of the disease pressure. We also have a shorter season, and we might be planting at different times of the year. Because of that shorter season, we have primarily a summer season. And in California, they have potentially multiple crops per year, and certainly different windows at, when they plant those crops. And it's not that no varieties from California can perform in the upper Midwest. It's just that if we select in the upper Midwest, we are much more likely to get varieties that perform in a way that growers need here. And that's true for any region. It's not just a contrast between California and the Midwest. It also is true in the Northeast or the Southeast. There are just very different climatic considerations and different ways that growers manage the crops that make a difference. There's also market differences. I mean, if you're selling direct to consumers, it's quite different than if you're selling to a wholesale market, which is what many of the large farms in California are doing. And so the traits needed in a wholesale market are not always relevant to a direct market grower. And that constrains what breeding programs can do, because theoretically you might be able to develop varieties that work for everybody, but every time you add a trait that you need to select for, you extend the time it takes to actually get the right combination of traits, and you grow the size of the program that you would actually need to identify the right combination.
So in some ways, it sounds like it's almost more efficient to have this decentralized breeding where you can focus on a targeted range of traits.
Yeah, I mean, for example, imagine like the diversity of radiostillage system is so vast. Like if you do a conventional centralized system, it's just impossible to breed in such a diversity of system, to maybe breed for canopy closure instead of vigor or rooting system. But yeah, with a collaborative system, I mean, imagine collecting inside or connecting 1,000 or 100,000 of growers inside together, and how this insight could shape breeding program, having people much more engaged.
I think that. Go ahead.
No, there's many logistical issues that came out from collaborative breeding that Julie, you have a lot of experience with.
I think it is more efficient in terms of getting varieties that perform the best in each region. Like we were saying, we're really focusing on the region, and so we don't have to worry about what would be important in other regions. It does require more people and more breeding programs. So if you want to develop a variety for every region, and maybe even multiple varieties that fit different market niches or different management systems, that requires more breeding programs and more people engaged. And what has happened is that the size of the seed market is smaller than for every variety. And so the logistics become more complicated for a seed company that needs to carry that many varieties. And so because it is simpler to try to develop varieties that perform okay across a broad range of environments and market a few varieties rather than dozens, or if a seed company is actually global in scope, they don't necessarily want a different catalog for every different region. It's kind of moved towards the reduction of the number of varieties that are available to growers, even though that might not be optimal for every grower. And so one of the things that we would like to do with this project and others that are similar is develop methods so that we actually can develop varieties that are adapted to particular regions without making the logistics and the cost prohibitive for small companies.
I think is a big aspect is really spot on, is a cost. Like, how can we reduce the costs and improve the efficiency of the breeding program to be able to have those variety released in a economically feasible way. And so
maybe we can get in a little bit then to the nuts and bolts of SeedLinked and how this participatory process works. And I do want to read your mission statement because I really like it. So SeedLinked is a benefit corporation, or a B Corp, with a triple bottom line dedicated to improving grower success, enabling resilient seed systems, and increasing agrobiodiversity by speeding up the commercialization and adoption of diverse specialty crops. From the novice gardener to the smallest seed company to expert commercial farmers and multinational plant breeding companies, SeedLinked envisions a future that is collaborative, transparent, and responsive to changing climates and preferences. I think you guys did, or Nico, you did an amazing job with that mission. It's very clear what your goal is. So can you talk a little bit about how the nuts and bolts of how SeedLinked works as a platform to connect people like Julie and farmers?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, first of all, this platform by essence is collaborative. It's been built and it's being built collaboratively. And it really started with Julie and I applying to grants in 2017 and then starting building it. And so really the essence is Julie has been working a lot, much more than me, in collaborative breeding before technology and with so much friction on, imagine working in a breeding with hundreds of growers, exchanging information, sending seed, collecting data, sharing results, making decisions on piece of paper and trying to share information has been very challenging. But the technology have made immense progress in the last 10, 15 years. I mean, everybody has a mobile phone. We all connected. And just looking around you, like how digitalization made huge impact, how now you can find like a ride with Lyft or Uber instantly, or you can put a bedroom on Airbnb and find somebody to rent it, or we are just creating a podcast here so easily, right? We all in different places and in a way it's super easy, right? Why can't we use those technology like cloud computing, mobile device, and data science to applying for seed to make it much more easier? So those are kind of the foundation of like, how can we make collaborative breeding that I strongly believe this is the way to be able to have more locally adapted variety and applies this digitalization to that process. And so starting to build this platform to connect independent breeder, or even just trialing. For example, Julie, you have a large trialing network with Seed to Kitchen, and you have so many growers who you send seed and they trial and they get data and send back. But with a platform model, how can we just invite via email or via invitations? They just accept on their mobile app. Then they automatically have the variety in their phone, and they can enter planting date, review, comments, and you automatically sync. We can see live results, picture, and this kind of in a connected world also is a problem that we had in the past, is that we have many organizations like UW mentioned with Julie, who are going to trial in many different places in many time, but historically all this information has been kind of silo and not connected. Put on PDF but the next step is how can we connect all those projects together and this collective knowledge that is created and to really give power to breeder, grower, and chef, all the supply chain in a sense, and really exponentially give value to everyone. And I love when Julie, I think you say, how can we build a tool that gives the same power and strength that the very large seed company has, but to regional system and I mean it's a, it started with a dream. Now we're kind of in the weed and with a mission to try to we are not there yet, and definitely it's many challenging to building such a tool, but yeah. Julia?
Yeah, the Seed to Kitchen Collaborative started really in 2013, 2014 as I was starting my program here at UW-Madison, and we grew quite quickly in terms of the number of farmers and chefs involved. It started out with a handful of farmers and grew because people wanted that kind of information. And so we would do trials at our research station under organic management and then send out varieties for on-farm trialing based on the best ones that we saw on the station. And then we involved chefs in tasting as well to identify varieties that consistently had really good quality. And so we grew to the point where the logistics were a major barrier. And we couldn't involve everybody who might want to be involved because we didn't have a way of easily tracking the data. All of it came back on paper data sheets or Excel spreadsheets. And when we summarized it, it was on PDFs on our website, which is still the case for the station data. But SeedLinked, as it evolved, has really allowed us to expand. And I'm not involved in the business aspects of SeedLinked, but Nico and I have worked on the actual how we do trialing and what the platform looks like for growers and for trial managers. And what has really helped is having the ability to involve a lot of people with a low cost. So we've expanded it to involve gardeners as well as farmers, and we've increased the number of participants and the number of trials we can run. Another piece of the SeedLink platform is that we can send subsets of the varieties to farmers so that we can still compare all of the varieties in the trial, but not all growers have to grow every variety, which means that growers that have more limited capacity are still able to participate, and they don't have to do as big a trial as we had to do in the past. And then the third thing that really has made a big difference is that the results are available almost in real time in a way that growers can access them. As soon as they complete a trial, they can see the results of other participants in that trial. And so they're not dependent on us collecting everybody's data sheets and running the analysis and putting it up on the website, which means they have the information before they're going to order seed for the next year. And so that's for variety trials. It's really made it a lot more possible to involve a larger network of growers. And then for the breeding, we're working right now on figuring out ways of involving more farmers in actually selecting new varieties on their farms in collaboration with independent breeders, public sector breeders, and others that want to do participatory breeding, but are challenged by the logistics. And so that goes to giving smaller seed companies and independent breeders access to the same kind of data and larger networks of sites so that they can actually do multi-locational trials at an early stage rather than being limited by what they can manage on their own. And so it's really exciting. And I think that, we're still in the early stages, but it has the possibility to give these smaller seed companies, independent breeders, and public sector actors a lot more power to select varieties that really work for their region.
Yeah, I mean, imagine like at the nursery stage of a breeding program or early on at like F2, F3, where you have so much diversity in the breeding program, traditionally it's just impossible to do multi-location. It's just like so costly. But trying to experiment with Julie and the platform model, how can we do a decentralized nursery where like we have a tomato and a pepper breeding project where 20 to 40 growers suddenly can test this diversity at the nursery level and give their feedback in really the complex systems they are in their management system. And so that would have never been done before in a cost-effective way.
So you've almost reversed the order of things in a way. Like what I'm hearing is that it used to be more, all right, we've got a lot of material, but we're gonna whittle it down on station, like in one or in a few sites, and then maybe we'll send things out to other people for different locations. But what you're saying is that now with this platform, it facilitates starting kind of earlier in the process at multiple sites.
Exactly.
Yep.
And because of the
No, go ahead.
Yeah, with the facilitation being much lower and the cost for as an example, we also work with Seed Saver Exchange, who have a ADAPT program, which is characterization of their seed bank and heirloom. They have more than 20,000 heirloom to characterize, and so that is even pre-crossing. Imagine like characterization of the genetics, and this started with 10 to 20 grower in their conventional system. And in the last 3 years, using Seedlink, this year we had more than 500 grower characterizing the seed bank, and for them is about 15 to 20 times cheaper to do it this way compared to the older way. And so it's the capacity and all this knowledge from all this characterization of seed bank will be able to also help independent breeder to source material for future crossing and breeding program.
Yeah, I was going to say something along the same lines. It goes even beyond the station trials to the breeding programs that created the varieties that end up on our station. So our station trials, even though we have a wide range of varieties, each of those varieties is the process of a, kind of whittling down by the breeding program, which might be based in, Maine or the coasts. And they have done selection there, and this is what they feel is the best variety. And many of them do well because those climates might be similar to ours, but they're not necessarily the same that would have been selected had we done early generation testing in the Midwest. And so this allows breeders, rather than going through that process of whittling things down and then just sending me their best guess at what the best variety will be, to actually send an earlier population before that happens out to farmers and have farmers participate in that process of picking the best one.
Today's episode of the No-Till Market Garden podcast is brought to you by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are designed and built in Italy, where small-scale farming has been a way of life for generations. Discover the beauty of BCS on your farm with PTO-driven implements for soil working, shredding cover crops, spreading compost, mowing under fences, clearing snow, and much more, all powered by a single gear-driven machine that's tailored to the size and scale of your operation. We have been using a BCS tractor on our farm since 2014, and it has saved the day and leveled the workload more times than I can count. And I find new ways to employ it every single season. To learn more, view sale pricing, or locate your nearest dealer, visit bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. To learn more, view sale pricing, or locate your nearest dealer, visit bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. And while you're there, select tractors and attachments on sale through the end of this year.
Transition your mind, your skills, and your future to organic with the University of Wisconsin-Madison's brand new certificate in organic agriculture. Students will explore the organic world from the soil to the store shelf with lots of stops along the way. We'll dig into policy, production, agroecology, supply chains, and much more. Whatever your interest, we'll work with you to fold organics into it. Learn more at uworganic.wisc.edu. The world is going organic, now you can too.
All right, back to the show.
You said before, Nico, that it might take 8 to 10 years to, bring a variety to market. Does this speed that process up, or is it still taking that long, but it's just kind of switching the order of things so that you end up with a better final product, or more regionally adapted, I should say?
Yeah, great question. And the breeding time can be seen in different way. I don't think it's going to speed up like the core breeding that much more, or just maybe Julie have maybe more insight on that. But the impact is, like you mentioned, is better adapted variety, but also, I think, Julie, you mentioned this too in different research you've done, is that the breeding length should include adoption of a variety. Like too many times, especially like in Africa and other places, we develop a variety maybe in 8-9 years, but it might take another 8 years before anybody is using it because either they don't know about it, they don't take the risk because they don't see performance, because data is not shared or is not connected or it's hard to find. And so by being collaborative, first you create this very strong empowerment of grower who are ultimately going to plant those variety. And Julie, you mentioned during collaborative trial, you increase adoption drastically. And I think by including in the breeding program, because you really create varieties that have a much better adoption, but also we collaboratively create this seed story, this variety story that when this variety reach the broader network of grower, in seedling, for example, you can see the full story of data that has been collected and picture and comments of this variety instead of just, oh, this variety is new, here's a picture, here's a description, and a few information, but it's a huge risk as a farmer to try if you don't have information. So
right, it's sort of hitting the market already farmer vetted. We don't have to trust just the seed companies telling us this is a really delicious zucchini. We actually can see that other farmers have grown it and they say it yields well and all of that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Plus, the seed companies really value having that information because it reduces their risk that a variety will fail after it gets released, because it's very expensive and time consuming to put a variety out in the market. And if it doesn't get adopted, that money is wasted. And so if smaller seed companies and independent breeders are able to really get that farmer vetting and farmer participation in the process, the end result is far more likely to be successful, which reduces their risk. In addition to having, the information makes the farmer's risk less in terms of planting it. So I think it helps us target the breeding process towards what's actually needed. And that probably shortens the time it takes for the variety to be planted on a larger scale, like Nico said, and also reduces the risk a lot on both the breeder and the farmer side.
Can you talk a little bit about your current trials? I know you're focused in the upper Midwest, and I don't know how many listeners are in that area, but what you currently have going on.
Yeah, I mean, seedling is used across all North America now, and it's also some of you are in different countries. Seedling is starting to be used this year in multiple countries in Europe, pushed by FEEBL, the Organic Institute in Europe, also by the World Veg Center, Western Africa, and also South America. In Argentina, it's going to start this summer.
In Canada.
And in Canada. And so Canada, we have the University of British Columbia, the Canopy Network, who are using it from coast to coast. And so a lot of trialing and breeding project on multiple crops there. On the West Coast, the Organic Seed Alliance is using it in different projects. Oregon State with the Dry Farming Project is using it. And also there's multiple seed companies that are starting to using like Fedco, Turtle Tree, Hudson Valley, Rose 7, and so all those network of trial can be joined by all those organizations are constantly looking for a grower. And obviously, Julie here, maybe you can talk about your program here. But.
Yeah, definitely. So all of the trials that people can participate in can be found on the SeedLink website. And then the ones that we're doing in the upper Midwest can also be found on the Seed to Kitchen website, where we usually post the trials in December, January for people to decide whether they want to participate. And so there'll be some variety trials, which might be existing varieties that we've done since 2013, 14 when the project started. And then the breeding trials are this kind of development process where we want people to participate in the breeding process and also help us develop the methods so that they work well for growers and for the independent breeders. So right now we have 2 breeding projects, one on tomatoes and one on peppers. And the tomato breeding project actually has multiple different populations to select. And so growers could choose whether they want something that's more of a cherry tomato size. We have a population developed by Erica Kempter at Nature and Nurture Seed that has many different colors and shapes that people can select from. And then we have a cocktail size tomato project that Keith Mueller at AC Tomatoes developed. And that is a yellow orange with some red striping or marbling that really has excellent flavor for that. It's more of a cherry tomato flavor and a cocktail tomato size. And so people can participate in that one. And then we have some that are more advanced lines from those breeders, where if people mostly want to test out varieties that might be released soon and not necessarily do selection, they can participate in that. And then the pepper breeding project is a cross made by Organic Seed Alliance between Wisconsin Lakes, which is a early bell pepper, red bell, and Doe Hill, which was curated by the Hudson Valley Seed Company, is a small orange mini bell. And we have got a lot of different types coming out of that. We're trying to see if we can get an early small red bell that will really work well for the upper Midwest. So people are welcome to participate in those, and the information will be on our website around the time that people are thinking about getting seeds for the next year.
What does that commitment look like? So how many seeds do you send, and how many varieties, and how many plants are people expected to grow out, and then what sort of information do they log? I know you said it's very easy to log the information because you just do it on your smartphone, but what kind of information are they logging?
Yeah, so they would get 3 to 4 breeding lines, and each one might have actually differences among the plants, but as we get farther into the process, there's more difference between the breeding lines and less variation within them. So last year we sent out essentially 15 plants to everybody, and every plant was individually different. And then this year we have some of that variation from plant to plant, but a little bit more from, one line that was selected last year from a plant and another line that was selected last year from a plant. And then next year, there will probably be even more difference between lines and less difference between plants within a line. And so growers would then have 3 to 4 lines and a checked variety, and we want them to plant from 3 to 6 plants of each line, depending on whether they're a gardener or a farmer. They might have more or less space. And then they make selections about which line they think is the best. And they rate each line for a number of different characteristics on a 1 to 5 star scale. So, kind of worst to best. We ask them to rate vigor and earliness, disease resistance, so ability to tolerate diseases usually, flavor, productivity, ease of marketing. And Nico can go into some of the details about what that actually looks like on the Seedlink platform.
Yeah, I mean, you really, in your app or on your PC, you have a card, which is a trial. And then when you click on it, you see the list of variety and the trait. And it's very easy to just pick the trait you want, enter a rating. Also, you can take a picture in the field and you automatically connect to the variety. So you don't have to upload somewhere else. And then Julie or all the people organizing can see those pictures as well as you as a participant. Very easy to enter planting day, transplanting day, harvest day. Those are very important in terms of the data maturity and earliness, but also being able to connect environmental data to it on the back end. You can make open comments directly in the app, and then all this is just connected with all the other participants, so you can really see the global result and also how people rated different variety, and then we can move to the next phase. I think it's F5. We have some F5 and F6 Julie this year, and so then the selected one will move to F6, F7, and more 6, and pretty much being released.
Right, and the F5, 6, 7, that refers to the number of generations after the initial cross. And so what happens is when you make a cross, the first generation is an F1 hybrid, which many varieties are an F1 hybrid that people might see in seed catalogs. If you save the seed from that F1 hybrid and plant it out, every individual plant is a different genetic combination, and so you see a lot of diversity in that.
Like you did in high school.
Right, exactly. And so then people can pick the best that they like, but that plant probably will not breed true. So that means that the progeny of the plant that you have selected will still have some diversity. And then you select again. And each generation that you do that, the progeny get a little more uniform because you're essentially selecting, this is in tomatoes, which is a self-pollinating crop, and we don't need to get into all the different reproductive strategies of plants, but in a self-pollinating crop, every generation gets less and less diversity within the individual. And so you'll go from having, different genes from the two parent plants to the two versions of the genes are identical. And so once that happens, after 6 or 7 generations, the line will, what we call, breed true, which means that the progeny of that line will look like the parent plant. And so as we get farther down the line, or farther in terms of generations, you see less variation in the progeny of an individual plant and more variation between different selections if people are picking different things like a red tomato versus a yellow tomato.
Yeah, great. And so like Julie mentioned, this pepper tomato, there's other organization on beets, on chicory, on cover crop. We also start working with Stone Barn, who has snow and snappy purple, where we are trying to improve the flavor. So all those are different programs that you can join. And we also will start a trial looking at no-till, different no-till system versus till on butternut squash. And so I know many of you are in no-till. It would be wonderful to have some of you joining that trial to look at different management system as well.
Can you talk a little bit about what you might anticipate are the differences between tilled systems and no-till systems and how that might affect plant performance and what traits you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, definitely vigor and competition in mixed system, canopy closure, and try to being able to develop in those complex system and to be able to mobilize enough nutrient and compete with living mulch or permanent bed system. Also, interaction at the root system between species that maybe translate into vigor or how to access more nutrients. And all that will be translated by visual scoring in terms of vigor, health of the plant, and obviously yields at the end and potentially flavor. And also, many of you have way more expertise and knowledge of what is the no-till systems than I do, and that's the power of like giving the farmer, who I believe has the most experience, to share what variety is doing better from the eyes, and so and to let you the opportunity to share that.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we move into these systems that are more ecologically sustainable, because right now most breeding is done in conventional systems, and the breeding that's done in organic systems is usually done in what the most common practices in that region. So in our case, for our trials, we use a tilled system with either landscape fabric for tomatoes or black plastic mulch. And there are some benefits to that system because it warms up the soil more quickly early on in the season. It mobilizes nutrients for early plant establishment. And so as we move to no-till systems, we have to overcome those challenges. But if we're not ever selecting varieties in those systems, we are not using all of the tools that we have in order to optimize those systems, because genetic adaptation to that type of system is one tool that farmers can use by planting a variety that's better adapted to no-till. And right now we don't have a lot of people doing selection in no-till systems. And I think that allowing these networks of farmers to help us select in different systems is one way to get to that point. And I would love to have more of our research station trials also in no-till systems that work in the upper Midwest so that we can start selecting early on and really do our screening trials of varieties from all over in a system that many farmers want to adopt.
Yeah, I think that is incredibly interesting and important. And I've always noticed, like, we have had historically a lot of squash breeding at the University of New Hampshire, and it's always been just a plasticulture conventional system. And I would love to see some alternative systems, because I do wonder how it affects. Another thing about those systems is, are you consistently giving them, drip irrigation? And what about climate change and systems that are rain fed, and how does no-till affect the moisture dynamics in the soil? And there's so much. So yeah, the management really can make a difference. Now, when you're looking at traits, are you always looking at above ground things, or do you ever look at what's going on below ground?
Yeah, very good question. We started some trial on cover crop with Albert Lee, but also with Cornell University, thanks to grants and for example, like tillage radish, looking at really root size and depth and biomass. So it's new, definitely, and it makes this project so exciting to work with so many different crops, but also very challenging to try to have a single tool try to be used across so many different crop and system. But so we are just starting it with a platform to use it below ground. But I think there's so much more to be done.
Yeah, it's hard to look at. It's much harder to look at anything that's happening below ground. Definitely.
Right. Yeah, we have some research collaborations with people in soil science, where they're doing more extensive research on the below ground aspects, but it is a very involved process and often requires quite a bit of replication in order to capture more subtle effects. And so it's a difficult thing to implement with participatory research, which is, geared towards being manageable for farmers. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the more detailed research on what is going on biologically may be better done on a research station or on a farm that has essentially a partnership with the university where grad students or others come out and do a lot of the data collection, because it's pretty significant in terms of a time commitment once you start looking at small differences below ground. I think it is really important, and certainly there are crops like we at UW we have some work on Kernza with Valentin Picasso, and also other perennial crops where the root system is really critical. And I think we need better methods for doing that in a cost-effective way, and also in a way that can engage farmers without such a significant time commitment.
Yeah, I think it's where picture in the future, and I was just amazed to see LiDAR, which is kind of a camera that can capture 3D and volume on your iPad. And I'm confident in the future our phone will be able to capture volume and size that could help just by via the phone to capture this information.
Yeah.
I think other more experimental areas. Like you started to talk, Julie, about Perennial, and this different organization who would like to pilot this model with a platform on tree like chestnut, hazelnut. Citrus is a huge issue in Southeast with the green disease in citrus. And so those are, I think, is the beginning, but I think we could also see a huge impact on collaborative model on perennial crop and tree.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I just love about this work is that it is really hopeful and like positive, and just, I don't know. I feel like these days it can be hard to find something that is so hopeful, but this is like really putting technology to an amazing use that could be very impactful in terms of making change. So, it's really exciting to hear about it. I did want to give you the opportunity to talk about the other aspect of SeedLinked, which is a way for people to buy seeds. So, Nico, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, innovating and working on the trialing and breeding, it's just been, like you say, just amazing and difficult too. I mean, running a project has been challenging, but innovating and seeing the impact, and it's definitely not perfect. It's been just so empowering. But how is so far most of the platform has been funded, thankfully, thanks to many people like Julie, via grants. And really from the start of the creation of SeedLinked, there was a consensus like, how can we build a tool that is resilient over time, can be self-funded, and try to be self-funded not via grants, but via a business model. So not only innovating in like crowdsourcing method, but innovating in business model. And I think it's something that there's less potential innovation in, but really there's a huge need for it. And so again, this was kind of, okay, can we do it? And so we started as a benefit corporation to really anchor the social, environmental, and financial aspect that now the benefit corporation must follow. The board is not only bound to the financial, but need to consider each one as important. And so how can we finance kind of this open innovation in the sense of creating regional adapted variety that I hope could be free for everyone in everywhere to really develop the seed, but where could we capture value or transaction that fund this platform? And so that is where kind of the idea of the marketplace came. It also came as a tool. I can start talking a little bit after for organic grower need, but so the marketplace is an aggregator, and the idea is to have multiple seed companies. This year we had a first pilot. We had 13 seed companies, from small like Nature and Nurture with Erica to Turtle Tree or Hudson Valley or Fruition, to larger like High Mowing or Fedco or Seed Saver Exchange. So about 13 seed company, which is about 8,000 variety and about 2,000 organic variety. And so having this in one place where you can make your decision across seed company, but powered by connecting inside. Like we talk about during this last hour about collecting information and connecting it. We imagine now connecting all this information behind all this variety across organization, across region, and being able to make a decision with not only the picture and the description, but all those input from everyone, and being able to buy it in one place across seed company. And so there we added filter, like during COVID, in stock has been a big issue, what variety is in stock, what is not. And so being able to look at in stock across many seed company, being able to look at organic and who carry one organic variety versus another, and being able to buy it across all, and the platform in the future will take a small fee that will allow to pay for the whole platform. At least that's the vision.
And so I could, in theory, go and do my Johnny's, my Fedco, and my high mowing order on SeedLinked.
That is correct. Johnny Seed is not part of the pilot yet, but
sorry.
I mean, it was just a restricted pilot just to test, as there's so many things to learn. And I'm hoping Johnny can join this coming year.
Maybe this will put some pressure on them.
But that is the idea. And also being able to, on your phone, we have an app, you can, there's so much discussion in conference between people around a variety. I was, for example, at a farmer market at Union Square, New York, and there was, I can't find Kogi-Nut, or I can't find Holly-Nut. Well, you can just search on the app and see, maybe high mowing or Fruition is carrying it, and I can add it to my wish list for my winter squash. So you can build kind of all your list of different crops, and then you can push this to one cart. So it's also a tool that can fuel in discussion of between each other. And when you hear a variety, you can say, I can search on SeedLinked and adding to a list. This way I don't forget. Or I'm in front of 10 seed catalog, and instead of just writing on the catalog, you can just add them to the different list in SeedLinked. So I think it can be a really good tool, bridging the gap between seed catalog and purchasing, and help organic grower finding organic source that they didn't know, finding in stock when you don't know across seed company, and looking at all the data from, we had this year, I think we had 5,500 grower, which half a master gardener, half a farmer, who contributed to more than 100,000 different insights, and all those are connected to that search engine. And people don't have to buy on SeedLinked; they can also just look at it and search and buy it somewhere else, obviously.
Well, I was reminded when I was preparing to talk to you all that there was this quote from Yvon Chouinard, who's the founder of Patagonia, which I think is also a B Corp. But
yeah, it is. Yeah.
And he said, everything we all do at work, unless you happen to sell organic seeds or night soil compost, hurts the environment more than it gives back. And so, but I think that you guys are you're like a step beyond just selling organic seeds. I think you're taking it to the next level of really trying to advance that movement. And so I think that is just awesome. And I really enjoyed talking to you both today. I will be in touch before we release this and check in with you just to make sure you've got stuff on the website and everything. So it was great talking. I think that was good.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thanks so much. I'm looking forward to listen.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks again to Julie and Nico for talking with me. They wanted this episode to be released around the time the new signups for participatory variety trials are posted on the SeedLinked website. So we'll try to accommodate that. Right now, if you go to seedlinked.com and go to the bottom of the website, there's a Grow With Us section, and under that you can click Participate in Variety Trials. Right now, as I'm recording this, there's only one trial listed, which was a winter hardiness trial of different crimson clover cover crop varieties. However, I know they have a bunch of new participatory projects lined up. So while you're looking through seed catalogs this winter and dreaming about all the things you'll do next year, head on over to seedlinked.com and see what's happening.
Hey, you all, Farmer Jazzy here. Just jumping in real quick to catch you up on some of what we have going on. I just got back from the Acres Eco Ag Conference in Covington, Kentucky, across from Cincinnati, and it was really cool to meet so many fans of the show. First, hi to all of you, and to see some of the new trends in ecological farming. That was super cool. Really loved, in fact, Dr. White's talk on the rhizophagy cycle. It's so refreshing to see not only someone who can translate the jargon so well, but Also someone who gives an endless number of shout outs to the people that help do the research. I really loved that. So thanks to Acres USA for putting on such a great conference. The next conference I will be attending, Jackson and I both, in fact, will be the Organic Association of Kentucky Conference, also known as OAK, in late January, the 26th through the 28th. Come down or up or over. Anyway, that should be a lot of fun. Tickets are on sale now, obviously, and we'll put a link in the show notes. We, No-Till Growers, will have a booth there as well. So come say hi and hang out. Also, have you checked out the new No-Till Growers forum yet? We're up to nearly 850 members or something there now, and growing, like fast growing. Would love to have you join us to chat about everything from soil management to farm business management. You can find the forum at notillgrowers.com. We will also put a link in the show notes. Also, like everything we do, the forum is free and open to the public. If you'd like to support our work, you can pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook at notillgrowers.com or one of the no-till hats, which are back in stock, by the way. Proceeds from those sales at notillgrowers.com go to making you more content. So that's a win-win if there ever was one. Or lastly, you can always become a Patreon member at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where not only may you get discounts on our stuff, on our merch, on the book, etc., but at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs this week to these amazing folks: Sean at All About the Garden, Bill Altman, Ian at Grindstone Farms, Stephen Smith, Oh High Roots, and Mike Trunky. Thank you to anyone and everyone who supports our show in whatever way that you can. And that's it for me. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you next week. Bye.